Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. First of all, I'm impressed about our timekeeping, that we started on time. So thanks a lot for all of you. It's my great pleasure and honor to have you and welcoming all of you with us today on such an important topic. The first time in Aerospace Gender Diversity Roundtable, while we have equal contribution, 50% male and 50% females. So thank you very much for that. I'm very proud about it. Our theme for this session is gender balance in aerospace. When nations, governments, companies, and societies put their mind to something, it happens. If we can put men, and for that case women, on Mars and Moon, then we ought to be able to put women in C-suite and boardrooms. Today is a great start for propelling a gender-balanced future. Thank you so much for being part of it. As a society, we're leaving a lot of money on the table by allowing gender gap to continue. In fact, McKinsey & Company report found that narrowing the gender gap could add between 12 to 28 trillion US dollars for global GDP. Given the rapid expansion of the global air transport and aviation industry, there is pressing need to guarantee current and future availability of aviation personnel. Half of the world's population is made up of women. Therefore, the attraction and retention of more women with sought-after aviation technical and policy qualification and experiences. Relevant opportunities need to be created locally, regionally, and internationally for women to be given an equal footing with their male counterparts. For Sanila, GE has been known to be leading the way in this aspect. So I would like to touch on the point about the resolution of E3930 by ICAO Gender Equality Program, promoting the participation of women in the global aviation sector, and its commitment to enhancing gender equality by 2030 at all professional and higher levels of employment in the global aviation sector. What are the initiatives that you are putting through to support gender equality in the industry?
It's working. So, since the last couple of years, something that I've enjoyed reading is our diversity report. I know probably a lot of the organizations here have started publishing a diversity report. So I think that's a great start, right? Because here we're bringing the numbers to the fore. It's transparent. We're seeing that as of the 2021 report, female employees are close to around 22% of the total population at GE Aviation. In addition to that, I think there's a lot of other initiatives that we do side by side. A few years back here in the region, we started the Return to Work program. It's kind of been dead for the last couple of years. The plan is to restart it. But this was specially targeted at women who took a break, probably have children, take care of children when they were smaller, and then how to encourage them to come back to work. So it was a very targeted program. Have a couple of colleagues who are doing really well at work when they were able to come back to work, and they're continuing to grow in the organization. In addition to that, we do run a lot of STEM programs with schools. Essentially, that's to encourage girls from the ages of 13 and upwards to pick science subjects, to understand the different career options, right? So it's not just doctor or it's not just an engineer. There are different avenues that they can pursue within healthcare, be it in the aviation sector, and so on. And then we also have a Next Engineers program, which is also targeted at more college graduates to kind of bring them into the organization and continue to grow them within the aviation sector. So those are very specific targeted programs at GE. I'm looking forward to learning more from other organizations as well.
Well done, and we hope to see more such initiatives. Such major initiative in the industry aims at collaboration on programs, projects, activities, meetings, networking events like this one, for example, to intensify the promotion of gender equality and the advancement of talent women within the global aviation community. Koljit Poing, can you provide us with some statistics and data on your current gender gap situation, and what is the plan to invest more opportunities for gender equal employment and training in the global aviation industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that in common with GE, we publish a report. We're very transparent about what the numbers are. And in the latest report, we had around 24.6% female in the workforce. Sorry, did you get any of that? So, about 24.6% of women in the workforce. But I think, look, when we think about the global aerospace environment, we have to think, I think, in a lot of different ways. If you think about it, aerospace, you've got this extremely broad supply chain. If you really think about how many people are employed through the supply chain, it's many. I think our estimates are that the industry here in the Middle East over the next 20 years will require another 224,000 jobs. And those are going to be jobs from everything from mechanics, pilots, engineers. And if you look at the demographic here, that's a very powerful demographic. We've got a young population here. We've got a large female population across the region. And there is absolutely no reason why we shouldn't see women in these roles. I'll give you one amazing example here in the UAE. So one of our suppliers, Strata Manufacturing, who we worked with for 10 years, that resulting in the production of the 787 vertical fin, this is an 80% female workforce. So I think that given the scale of projects that we're working on, I think that partnership with governments and with governmental or semi-governmental organisations in terms of really working with them to ensure that females are also given the opportunity is great. And of course the other great way of doing that is through our global engagement. I think many people call that CSR, but we call it global engagement. And we've done some great projects. Rula and I were in Amman, Jordan for one of my first projects, which we closed out a STEM project in Amman for 11 to 16-year-old girls. And these weren't just girls from Amman, but from the outer region that perhaps were even less represented. And, you could just see the excitement in the faces. And what you think is if you just inspire one or two people and make them understand the breadth of the opportunity, I think it could be a good thing. So it's great to see everybody doing similar things, and I think that we'll see some success in that.
Thank you so much. Let's talk about the tough topics, legal framework. So, Country, from your point of view and also as an industry leader, what legal frameworks that promote, enforce, monitor gender equality and ensure equity at C-suite and boardroom?
Can you get me? Okay. Thank you so much for the question. It's certainly D&I is at the forefront of everybody's mind. So just within the UAE, you can see that there's been a big push to focus on making sure that policies, legislation are inclusive, they further equality and participation in both the workforce, public and private. And one good example of that is the requirement to have 50% females on boards for publicly listed companies. And then I think internally too, private companies are also taking the same objectives on board and making it important. So within Raytheon, we have a report that we release on an annual basis that outlines all the DE&I initiatives that we're performing. We also have a global advisory board that's headed by our chairman, and that's to look at DE&I throughout the world globally. And I think it's important that we transform our ideas into impact. And so we are making a big push on that. Actually, here in the Middle East, North Africa region, we're looking at implementing our very first women's network, ERG, Employee Resource Group. So I think all these things are very important, both from a legislative perspective, but also internally within companies.
Mark, Solvay, thank you so much for filling in for Ilham Qadri, the CEO. So here we have an actual life example of an organization led by a female CEO. As per ILO study, Women in Business and Management, the business case for change, having female CEO is positively associated with greater gender diversity at the middle, at senior and top management levels. What is your own experience in terms of having a female CEO at Solvay, how it impacts the organization?
Sure, thank you for the question. Look, I think it's pretty obvious to the entire organization of Solvay that we have experienced D&I in a much more real fashion in the last few years. D&I comes with a clear vision. It has objectives which are tracked, measured, communicated across all the fields of D&I within the organization. It's something that, as a member of the Solvay organization or previous organizations, I haven't really experienced at the level that we're experiencing today. So that in itself was quite a shift. And we're starting to see the value of that in the type of discussions we have. We realize that maybe sometimes we didn't have empathy for the challenges associated with the hurdles that exist in D&I because we weren't talking about it. Now that we do talk about it, we find a safe place for everybody to bring up D&I topics. And that makes for a closer-knit team, a team that is willing to go the extra mile and that delivers results. So in all, it really is, I would say our CEO is walking the talk, and the organization is following and seeing the value of it.
Thank you, and congratulations on this achievement. Anna, Sab, another great examples that we have here of an actual example female leader on the table. So thank you for joining us. The aviation engineering, just like many engineering entities, is very male dominant, as for example, pilot operations, etc. It's challenging, but both these sectors are male dominated. How can we encourage more female contribution for those?
Yeah, I've started as a mechanical engineer, and if you start there already, I mean, in Sweden, where I come from, which I think in general is quite gender balanced and quite gender equal in many ways, compared to perhaps some other countries, but you have 10% female doing mechanical engineering, and it's I met some recently as well, and it's still the same. It's just not a big interest for women in certain fields. And I think looking at the defense industry, which Saab is, then that's always going to be a challenge. It's not going to be available that many women. So that's just sort of a ground fact, I think. What Saab is doing to attract more women is there are many things. There are female networks and there are approaches to schools at young age to get young girls more interested in the technology and engineering. But I think the thing to mention from Saab's point of view, it's working actively with setting goals on female management. And that has been ongoing for quite many years. And just as an example, between 2007 and 2017, the number of female managers within the Saab organization, were 18,000 people in total, doubled. And the current goal is that we should have 30% female managers globally within Saab. We're currently at 27. And there should be 25% female employees in total. We're today at 24. So I think that's the key thing that Saab is busy with, is making sure the leaders are there as role models to attract more women. I mentioned quickly one more thing, and we have active workshops on diversity. So of course gender diversity is included in that, but it's all kinds of diversity. And for me, being the managing director and the CEO of the local company here, building a very diverse in all ways organization with engineering heavy, then that has actually been very useful in that you talk about these things, you highlight them, you understand each other, and you see the importance of it.
Thank you so much, and thank you about speaking about the bigger scope of diversity, and we were touching on this earlier. And I have to say, actually this group, look at us. I believe we come from at least 14 nationalities or 14 people. So that by itself a testament about the wealth of contribution that we can have once we have diversity from all aspects, not just gender. But for the sake of today's focus, we're focusing on gender diversity, but it's much a bigger scope, like you mentioned. Dr. Nadia, you're a life example of an Emirati pioneer in a male-dominant industry and sector. And I have to say, I assume that your journey is even more challenging simply because of our culture, where we come from in the Arab world. So we have so many challenges beyond just an organization in terms of social, in terms of legal framework, etc. What are the learnings that you have acquired over the years and that you can advise for other talents to be able to have more an accelerated path, to some extent not to have to fall into the same difficulties that you had?
I think, honestly, once I started my career, there's a lot of stereotyping. I think when I started very young, 14 years ago in the aviation industry, I was in the medical field, and I was the first aviation medicine specialized UAE national. When I came to Etihad, the first thing they said, "Where's the doctor?" And I said, "I am." They said, "No, I know you're the nurse, but I want to see the doctor." So initially, people thought female Emiratis can't be a doctor. And a doctor had a certain stereotype. It has to be a certain age, maybe a certain way, a look and feel, that when the person or the people saw me didn't fit that profile. I didn't fit that profile. But I think that first step made me realize that I have a journey to explain, a story to tell. It is not about who I am in appearance, whether I'm a UAE national, whether I'm my nationality, whether my age, but what I am here to offer in terms of my merits and my skills and my capability. And it took time for people to accept, but it also takes patience. It also takes a thick skin for you to be an industry dominated with male. And you have to ensure that you come across professional all the time. Emotion doesn't have a place in this type of industry. Because very easily women are associated with emotions. But again, we don't want to have a persona that we are mimicking a male personality. We have to ensure that we are ourselves in delivering the bigger picture. I think you always need to focus on the bigger role. What are you wanting to build? I then became the first female vice president Emirati at my organization. And it took people to recognize that it was not just because I'm an Emirati, it was because I had the skills and capability to do so. And many years later today, I'm the first female chief in the GCC country representing the C-suite level at Etihad as an organization. You start becoming a role model because your actions, the way you talk, the way you dress, the way you address people, this is where people then aspire to become you or become to your position. So it's very important that you lead by example. Every actions that you take is counted for because now you're in a position of a role model. At Etihad, our percentage are very high. We are 32% female. And we design programs that encourage young engineers, young pilots, young mechanics to come and join these programs. And we increase the percentage to up to 6% in those programs. We created a platform where we recognized the people by their skills rather than their gender. We created policies that support female in terms of how are we recognized as a family-friendly brand, where we have flexibility and work-related stuff. The important today is these challenges continue to grow as you grow in positions, because as you move up the ladder, you become more lonely because there is male clubs, male groups, and they would go for a drink, and I'm not going to be associated in that drink, or they would go for golf, and I'm not going to be there for the golf sessions, but I am in that C-suite alone. And it's important to find a way that I can network with that group of people, because regardless whether I drink or not, I do golf. Yeah, if anybody asks me, I would love to do golf, but nobody did. But then imposing yourself is not the right thing. Including yourself is important. So it's important that you do something that you're comfortable with. You initiate certain initiatives, like would you all like to come for a coffee or a high tea? So you include yourself as well. Inclusivity and diversity doesn't come in one. You can't clap your hands alone. You have to do some of your efforts alone, yourself as well. And this helps you bring that platform for people then to recognize what you're capable of doing or not. Men sometimes don't understand exactly what is your limits and limitations and where you're comfortable on. And they feel if we don't approach this person, we're more comfortable because she's in a comfort zone. But you need to recognize where you're comfortable or not. And I always advise people not to become a very strong, rigid character and aggressive like men. Be yourself, because that's why you're a woman, and that's why you bring diversity to the group. Your emotions, the way you set up, the way you talk, your physiology, your psyche. This is what we need to bring into the table to change the mindset and the decision making of the future.
Thank you very much. Coming to the consulting perspective, Manfred from Roland Berger. Oh, sorry. Hi. Diversity and inclusion is the next frontier for companies, and that those that get it right will not only be better placed for the future, but to perform better. So it's the smart and the right thing to do. Why we still face so many challenges, regardless of all these statistics and facts that have been put in place?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for that question. Quite a broad one. Yeah, thank you. So thanks for that question. That's quite a broad one. I would say the central word here is bias. You said stereotype, which is a little bit the same. And I can bring two perspectives or contributions here to the group. First, as an observer of the aerospace industry, I'm responsible for aerospace and defense practice with the Roland Berger. But secondly, and maybe that's the more interesting example here, as part of the management team of a global consulting company. And let's be honest, consulting is also a male business, always been a male business. Hard working hours and all this kind of stuff. And but it's also, just like aerospace, an industry lacking talent, in need of talent, need of excellent talent. And if you sort of neglect 50% of the workforce, you just won't make it. So very early on, I mean, it's been with the company 25 years now. We've had this discussion for 25 years, almost. Early on, we were looking for how can we engage more with female workers. And while in the beginning we managed to hire them, we also found out that very quickly they left us. And then we started to dig deeper. And the result, I would say, is twofold. First of all, we understood ourselves, we had to understand ourselves, that there's a lot of bias in our system. That women were just not regarded as being equal because people didn't think about it. As you said earlier on, I mean, a doctor, a pilot, people think it's the male. Why? When you change these kind of things, it starts to happen. So what we try to do is to sort of change or adapt or enrich the system end to end. It starts in recruiting. It continues with the project work. Continues the way you evaluate people on projects. It continues with the way you mentor them throughout their careers. And most importantly also, what kind of, I would say, flexibility do you give to for family life? Yeah? So lots of topics. I would say we're somewhere on the journey. I can give you a few examples. I'm sure we have not solved it all. I mean, in terms of population, depending on the country, I mean, we are at 20, 25% maybe female, but not enough in the higher ranks. Yeah, that's below 10%. Yeah? I'm very happy. Here in the Middle East, I have 2 ladies leading our aerospace and defense practice. I mean, that's really a role model for me. It may be surprising, but I'm not that surprised because what I see on the terrain here is a lot of conscious about the topic, and I see these women succeeding and doing an excellent job, actually. So tell me when to stop. Yeah?
5 minutes ago. No. If you like to have a closure.
Maybe 2 things. Just starting on the recruiting. Yeah? First thing we did is we did specific recruiting for engineers because engineers are difficult to catch. Yeah? Now we even have specific recruiting activities for women engineers. Yeah? That's when they start seeing that they will not be alone. That's the most important thing. And most of the women left us because they felt alone. Yeah? Then we continue by setting up internal female networks, globally. Which is a way also of value the talent. Yeah? And then most of all, you need those role models. I think you're a good example. And the role model is also a little bit difficult topic because at some stage you have to make an investment, put someone in a place who you're not sure if he or she is up to the topic yet, but you have to start somewhere. So today we have one lady in our supervisory board. Our executive committee is too small and we have not found one yet, but we need one. So we are on our way, but we also recognize it's still a long way to go and to sustain it.
Thank you very much. You've put an emphasis on networks and association, and other colleagues have mentioned that. So the question to you, Mervat, since you're the president of the Women Association, in this field, what is the role of non-profit associations like yours?
Thank you. Thank you to be here with all of these nice people. First, we need to understand the problem. Let's start from the beginning. What is the problem here? In most aviation occupation, I will take a US an example. I will tell you why later. Women count less than 20% in the aviation industry. And over the last 60 years, we noticed that increasing on this number is not much. Every 1 decade, it's more or less 1%, which is this very bad. Now, also in the US, we have a survey, it says that 38% of these women in aviation are considering to leaving the industry, unfortunately, for many reasons. One of them, it's work-life balance, and followed by a negative workplace culture. And also, this survey showed disappointing problem due to gender bias and discrimination. Now, why we don't have these numbers here in Middle East? Unfortunately, we don't have data. That's very bad. Now, government and NGO need to be partner for many reasons. Why? Besides summit, we need them to develop this I will mention here. Besides summits and conferences, there should be a think tank like this one we have today, so they can actually task and bring positive change to the industry. They need to expand the aviation career awareness program for all women, for all ages. We need to not considering on one age or certain age. Invest in training and retraining. Why is retraining? Retraining because of changing and advanced technology we are seeing every day now. So you have to keep them up to the date, not forget them. Okay, they get the certificate, okay, sit down. You have to keep them up to the date. You have to concentrate on the high school. in order to provide a solid roadmaps for aviation career. Provide scholarship and internship programs for women only. Support women in the workplace. Not only they have the certificate, they have the job, no. You have to stay with them in the workplace. You have to support them there. In specific needs, they continue to the important role they play as caring for their family and children. We know that women and men, they have responsibility, but I believe women, they have more responsibility for their families. We don't have to mention feeding baby in middle of the days. Now, there's an immediate need to our industry to create an organization purely for collecting and analyzing data. Again, why data is very important. Unfortunately, the latest we noticed that data has become a commercial product, which is very bad for our industry. Why? Because we need this data to analyze and to understand where we are, where our industry now, where we are standing. I give an example. With the data, we can tell how many women we have in working fields, why we have more women in piloting, less in engineering. We need to understand how many there are in operation and how many they have at the airport and civil aviation and the airline. You just name it, numbers. We need to understand how old they are. Are they coming into the retirement age? So we need to get a replacement here. For these countries, 1 minute? Okay, I'll leave it at this is very important to know where they're coming from. Are they expert or they are local? Because expert, that means they will work in here for a couple of years and they leave. So you need a replacement for this job. So I'll take next later. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this important contribution. Steve, Northrop Grumman, historically male-dominated military industrial complex has taken a female turn. So let's talk about some good news here. 4 of the top 5 A&D manufacturing companies are headed by women, including your own, Kathy Warden. First of all, congratulations. And does the sector today have the right structure and tools to develop diverse and purpose-led leaders to enable successful, sustainable, and inclusive future?
Well, great. First of all, thanks for the question. And I will say Kathy Warden is an exceptional leader and is really a role model for not only women, but also everyone in the industry. So I think it's great to have her in place and certainly driving the company forward in the right direction. Yeah, I would say from a Northrop perspective, certainly we have the right structure, infrastructure programs, culture in place to drive change. So I'll kind of frame my answer in the Northrop perspective. On Kathy Warden's team, they have 35% women at the corporate executive level, which I think is exceptional. And I think she drives the thinking, the culture, the programs, the working groups, the employee resource organizations with a high level of accountability to drive change in our company. So I'm incredibly proud and encouraged by that. And I think some points that were made previously on women leaders. I think it's also the onus is on the men as well to be role models. I personally run the NG WIN organization, Women's International Network. I'm the executive sponsor for that. It's incredibly personal to me. My wife's an aerospace engineer. To be honest, she fixes most of the things around the house. She's much more handy than I am. I have 2 daughters. One's a biomedical engineer doing bone cancer research. The other's an agricultural researcher. And just to have the men role models out there that are driving the change as well. So I think it's important to have the structure, the working groups, and also the male and female role models in the organization to drive change.
Thank you very much, and right on time. So you get 2 stars. Shifting to our Saudi female representation, Abir from SAI, welcome and thank you for being with us today. Is gender, in your opinion, still holding back women in the aviation industry in the region?
Well, that question is right on point. I would like to answer it in two parts, basically. One, I'll tell you how gender is with aviation inside SAI, internally in the company, and then I would like to talk a little bit about it in the kingdom-wide in Saudi Arabia. So first of all, I'm very proud to be appointed in the HR committee to be the spoken voice for all girls in SAI. So the first step is creating the right environment for them. And this is what we're doing with the HR committee, making sure to support all the girls, give them their needs, and solve any issues they might have in the work environment so they can produce better and be more efficient. First girl was hired in 2019. It was all men only. You know, it's like the MRO field is, I would say, in Saudi perspective, going back to being like thinking of like the picture that say maintenance is linked with guys only. How can girl be part of this? So the first girl was hired on 2019. Total number of girls was 5 only. And then after Captain Fahad joined lately, Captain Fahad Sindi, our CEO, he's very encouraging of girls and empowering them. During the last year, the number jumped up to 50 girls. It's not the goal, but this is like multiplied by 10, from 5 to 50. So I'm very proud to be part of it. Still less than the 1% comparing to the men, but SAI is giving it priority, and like all the girls are across the kingdom working on different levels: managerial, senior, junior, like all levels. So that's the part of SAI part, and then for the Saudi Arabia aviation and girls, I don't know if you guys heard about the news last weekend. First flight, it was a domestic flight by Fly Adil. It was the first flight with all-woman crew. So this makes me proud. So yeah. So this was like a very huge milestone for women empowerment in Saudi Arabia, and majority of the crew was from Saudi Arabia as well. So that's another thing. Really proud.
Wonderful. And as we always say, we don't want a revolution. We want an evolution. So one step at a time, one program at a time.
Yes.
And of course, the contribution of our male counterpart is equally important. We need both to be on the table to ensure that we're really inclusive of all perspective. Gregory, Hemiria, thank you for being here with us today. There are many barriers that women are being challenged by. So we talked about legal barriers, we talked about, certain region-related barriers. What can we do about the social barrier?
Okay. About social barrier, I don't know if it's been the main issue, social barrier in our domain. So, Emilia Group is a space and defense company in France, so we do not do aeronautic, we do space and defense. I mean, the situation is as follows. First, we do not have so many candidates, female candidates, in our open position. So this is the first issue. We need more candidates, more engineers, technicians, managers who are female. But there is an opportunity now because we have many open positions, right? And we do not have any candidates at all. There is a huge lack of engineers today in every sectors. So I think there's an opportunity now for everyone, male or female, to be hired in a company, because we really need to hire and have new people in the company. So I think maybe the situation is different from before, and there is really an opportunity. But what we try to do is also to show that even if you are higher in the company, you can grow and you can have access to a high position in the company. And how we do that, we try to have 50% male and female in all our boards, strategic board, management board, every board we have, we try to have 50%. And just to say, it's possible. It's feasible, and you can have access to this kind of board. And then to come back to the first problem, which is we do not have candidate at all, and so there is an opportunity for female to enter in our company or in our sector. What we do today is we are ready to open position to people that are not in France, that are localized outside of France, and we tell them, okay, you can work staying in your place, whatever the country is, thanks to internet and all this technology we now have. And then maybe it's also an opportunity for female to work, because they don't have to come to in France to be located here, and they can have their own life on their place. So my point is, I don't know if there are social barriers. I cannot talk about that because we don't see any in France or in Europe. But I will be positive, because I think, again, that there is a different situation now, and there are really opportunities for female, thanks to, I will say, this situation of unemployment, which is dramatically bad today for all sectors.
Thank you. Amina, KPMG, thanks for being with us today. One of the challenges in the aviation industry is the 24/7 shift working business. And to be a leader, you need a lot of operational exposure. What can we do about that?
Thank you, Nairuz, and thank you for this wonderful discussion, and thank you for making us part of it. The 24/7 is not a strange or not foreign to females, the nurses, the doctors. If you've been in any technical industry, then you'd probably have long hours and high-performing environment. So I think that a few biases or concepts that we have are no longer, let's say, it needs validation. A recent survey that KPMG has done for the UAE Leaders Outlook answered that over 2/3 of women feel that they live in a structure that is equal, family structure that is equal. And that is one of the things that comes up as women need to be at home more, and women need to take care of children. But more and more we're hearing voices that say, no, we do have equal opportunity in our life. It's the organization that now needs to shift. We often take the conversation to the women and what they need to do and what they need to change and how they can handle obstacles. And I think we need to shift the conversation towards how organization can be more structured with an inclusive structure that allow women to have clear path to grow their careers within that industry. I have changed my career at least 4 times. I started in the IT, digital, moved to aviation, before that public sector, and then now in advisory. And when I reflect on that journey, often it was because there is no clarity on where I can take my career in this industry, or I actually hit a glass ceiling. So having role models such as the ladies that we have in senior position in a certain industry plays a big role. And I think there needs to be a little bit more focus on how those leaders can actually pave the way and highlight biases that go unnoticed. There are things that are biases that are very obvious, and there are biases and that go unnoticed. And I think the way to do that, and I'm going to close now, the way to do that is to keep it personal. I think we need to hear more voices from women that actually has gone through the journey and understand all the inhibitors across that journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your contribution. Apologies, I just noticed that we haven't tackled the education perspective, which is equally important, if not more important, because if we don't have a healthy pipeline, how can we have any sustainable efforts? So I would like to ask our professor, Sorry, I'm bringing you here on the table, but I know that you can give us some insights from an education perspective.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Loredana Santo. I'm a professor of manufacturing processes at the Second University of Tor Vergata, Italy. And I'm very glad to be here now. In the education, the situation is like in other sectors. In my faculty, we have a lot of young women in engineering, not in mechanical engineering, but in other, in management and other field. And they are so strong and kindness, they have kindness and strength, and they work hard to be the best in the courses. I'm very glad of it, but when they go into the in the company, in the other sector, it's difficult for them to have high position. And the same in my university. I was the first head of the department in the Faculty of Engineering. It's strange, but the situation is not so good in Italy. I don't know in other places, but in Italy, in the Faculty of Sciences, no, there are many women. But in engineering, in the medical field, and in law, no. There aren't not so much women in high position. This is the situation in my country.
Thank you so much for this insightful contribution and for thinking on top of your feet with my unprepared question. I appreciate that. We've done really well with timing, so we have a couple of minutes. If anyone would like to add a point that is super important for you that it didn't come across, please feel free to do so.
I think one of the things that I would like to add is we need to start thinking about the future of jobs. And today the platform, the landscape of future of jobs is not going to be the same as it is in 10 years' time. So we have to start thinking about the pipeline from today to see what are going to be the future jobs that are going to be available, so that we start very early in building that platform for women to then start applying for those jobs. Today, technology, it's going to be technology-driven industry. There will be more robotics coming in. There's aerospace. So we are now still back focusing people to go into engineering and technician. But 10 years from now, these jobs are going to be totally automated or different. So I think we need to look at what is the future landscape and how are we going to prepare the future generation for that landscape. I think another thing we talked about in a bit of a touch, men play an equal role. And it's always emphasis, how do we train women? How do we prepare women? We need to prepare men to be ready to have a boss that is a female, to have a colleague that is equally their peer is a female, and how can they be inclusive of that type? Because most of the focus is how can we train women, how can we build their confidence, how they build women and men, knowledge-wise, skill-wise, are the same. So we need to build a culture that can have the both people working together in a very healthy way, so that the negative notation, the negative biases are not there at work. So we have to start building that culture of inclusivity, and regardless of gender, it is about nationality, it's about everything to do with that. And when we're talking about reports, and it's amazing that we have numbers, but we should focus away from numbers. We're not here, and even with Emiratis, when we were doing Emiratis program, they were like focused on how many Emiratis do you have versus how many other expats, how many women do you have versus other. No, it's what are the skilled people you have, because when you deep dive into a certain sector and you see, okay, I am 32%, but when you go into pilots, it's only 4%. And if you go into senior management, it's 32%. But if you go into C-suite, it's 1%. So what is exactly that you want to be recognized with? And I think these are the key things that you should focus on as we go in the future.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think we've sort of talked a little bit about it, but I think that the inclusion aspect is crucial. So, Boeing, we talk about global equity, diversity, and inclusion. So I think that when we look at things like the data, which I think is important, and by the way, there are just many, many barriers to collecting this data and segmenting it. Every country has now got very extensive privacy legislation that makes it a minefield to collect this information and to process it. But the inclusion aspect is crucial because you can, the numbers can look good. You can put up a org chart and it can look terrific. But if the women or the minorities are not actually included in the key decisions, there's going to come a point when they wonder why they're even there. And so once people start to feel that it's a tokenistic situation, that leads you to, I think, not a good place as an organization. And so I think that we must never forget that. And I think we've got to constantly challenge our unconscious biases. I just think that's really important. Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of bias, I think that's really the topic that needs to still be worked on, and that's also a communication topic. I mean, if you look, for example, of how we portray consultants today as compared to a few years ago, we show females today, so that it becomes natural in the minds of people that it's a female kind of job. And it takes time, but communication, I think, is an important point to break those biases. Perception is reality.
Absolutely.
If I can just add, I mean, you've spoken about the advisory or the consultancy business. I'm sorry, I had to jump in because I recently joined. And it's very similar to when I first started with the digital field. When it's male dominant, there's a lot of biases that go unnoticed. And it's shocking that when I started early 2000, now 20 years later, I'm in an industry that still have symptoms that I experienced 20 years ago. So you're absolutely right. On the there's a room for mind shift to towards understanding that there needs to be an internal change first to support the diversity agenda.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much for your amazing contribution. I think we have great wealth of knowledge that we can generate meaningful outcome paper from this session. This is the first, and I highly would love to invite you and encourage you, if you're interested, to stay engaged with us so that we can have more to come, so we have a sustainable efforts, not just one time off. We at Envision Partnership focus quite a bit on female executive search. And we have created several programs, especially post-COVID, to recover the shortage and the loss that globally happened in terms of women contribution. But in addition to this, I would like to invite you all. Next spring, we're going to initiate, as of today, celebrating this initiative, Corporate Heroes, where we were going to celebrate organizations that have accomplished certain milestones. We're starting by C-suite, and we're hoping next year it will be for boardrooms. So you're all invited, and thank you so much for your contribution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.